History is not silent, but there are moments when neither armies march nor thrones shake, and yet the direction of time changes. Galileo looked to the sky and questioned Earth's place. Leonardo united art and science in a single body, and Isaac Newton made the universe speak in numbers. Now it was time for the man who questioned time itself. Albert Einstein was quiet, often lonely, and frequently misunderstood. He was not an authority. He did not become a leader. He had neither an army nor a crown. What set him apart was not power, but the question he asked, what is time, really? That single question fundamentally changed how we understand the universe. This was not the history of wars, but of thought, and this story was the story of Albert Einstein. Albert was not like other children. He spoke late and remained silent for a long time. He did not answer questions quickly. Because of this, some thought he was slow. Others said he would never achieve anything. But silence is not always emptiness. Sometimes it is a sign of depth. Albert would fade into crowds. He did not join games, did not like noise. His world was not outside, but inside. When he was still a small child, his father gave him a simple compass, a metal needle trembling beneath glass pointing in one direction. But what caught Albert's attention was not the compass itself. It was the invisible thing that moved the needle. No one touched it, no one pushed it, yet the needle pointed the same way. In that moment, a crack formed in Albert's mind. Something unseen was affecting the visible world. Perhaps reality was not as simple as it seemed. From that day on, Albert's questions increased, but not the answers, because some people ask world-changing questions too early, and the world is not ready for those questions. School was not a place of discovery for Albert. It was a mold. There was memorization, there was obedience, but no room for curiosity. Albert was not looking for answers. He was looking for reasons. But in classrooms, the question why was dangerous. His teachers did not like him. One teacher told him, "Someone like you will never get anywhere in life." This was not a prophecy. It was the fear of the system. Albert did not bow to authority. He was not created to take orders, but to understand. Over time, school became an obstacle for him. He was left without a diploma, without a job, alone. But he was free, because for some minds, freedom comes before success. Even before Albert Einstein had achieved anything, he had chosen the path that would change the world. The price of that choice was loneliness, and Albert accepted it. Staying outside the crowd sharpened his thoughts. The farther he moved from noise, the stronger the inner voice of his mind became. He did not see himself as a failure. On the contrary, he knew he was standing where others were not looking. Because real questions are born not where there is applause, but in silence. For Albert, loneliness was not a lack, but a space, an emptiness where thought could roam freely. In this emptiness, the concept of time slowly began to dissolve. Hours lost their sharp edges. Moments began to stretch. The invisible force he had seen in the compass as a child now reappeared in his mind. He could not yet name it, but he was certain of one thing. The universe was stranger than it was described, and he was not willing to live without understanding that strangeness. This stubbornness did not frighten him. On the contrary, it calmed him, because understanding was his way of surviving. While others chose to adapt, he chose to ask questions, and that choice would one day reset all the clocks of the world. But in those days, no one knew this. Albert was just thinking, quietly, deeply, patiently, and that patience would soon make time itself questionable. That is why the story does not end here. It begins here, moving forward with silent steps alongside a mind walking toward the threshold where time would break. While Albert Einstein was preparing to change the world, no one was aware of it. His name did not appear in newspapers. Academies did not open their doors. Universities did not invite him. Professors ignored him. He spent his days in a modest patent office in Bern, Switzerland. On his desk were files, technical drawings, clocks, gears, and other people's ideas. From the outside, he was an ordinary clerk, but that ordinariness created a place where he could hide. The monotony of the patent office gave Albert the most valuable thing: time. There were no exams, no grades, no authority, only questions. During the day, he examined documents. At night, he set his mind free. The man no one cared about was, in fact, dismantling and reassembling the fundamental concepts of the universe. He was thinking about time, space, motion, and measurement separately. Albert asked himself a simple but dangerous question. If two observers move at different speeds, does time flow the same for them? If the speed of light is the same for everyone, what is absolute? These questions threatened centuries of accepted physics, because since Newton, time had been seen as an unchanging background. Albert did not accept this assumption. He realized that the speed of light remained independent of the observer. No matter how fast you ran, light moved at the same speed. This small fact led to a great consequence. If speed changed but light did not, then what changed was time itself. According to Einstein, time was not fixed. It stretched, slowed, accelerated, and even bent with motion. Events thought to occur simultaneously separated into different moments for another observer. Clocks did not work the same way. Distances changed. Reality could not be seen from a single window. The universe was not absolute, but relative. The year 1905 was like an explosion for Albert Einstein. In this single year, he wrote multiple papers. Special relativity, the photoelectric effect, and the reality of atoms were all contained in these texts. The world of physics was shaken, but the source of the revolution was still invisible, because these ideas were born not in a laboratory, but at a patent desk. At first, there was skepticism. Calculations were repeated, equations were tested, objections were raised. But the result did not change. Einstein was right. Time was no longer a universal clock. It was a dimension shaped by motion. This idea changed humanity's view of the universe forever. And while all this was happening, Albert went to the same office again the next morning, sat on the same chair. Because for him, it was not about fame. It was about understanding. He did not see himself as a revolutionary. He simply followed the right question, and sometimes that is exactly what changes history. The walls of the patent office were silent, but this silence was not empty. There, thought moved freely. The more Albert stayed outside the crowds, the more clearly he heard the voice inside his mind. Questioning what everyone accepted was a habit for him, because progress was born not from obedience, but from doubt. This thought that stretched time would soon affect space as well. The fabric of the universe was changing, and the human mind was facing a new boundary. This boundary required not knowledge, but courage, because abandoning the familiar, looking into the unknown, was difficult for most people. Albert took that risk, quietly, without challenging anyone, simply by thinking. And this silent challenge determined the direction of the 20th century. He was not aware at the time, but the lines he wrote would influence future technologies, satellites, the atom, energy, and even daily life. The relativity of time left humanity not with certainty, but with responsibility. Because understanding the universe also determines how we will use it. Einstein sensed this, and the idea that rose from a patent desk soon spread to every corner of the world. Clocks changed, measurements changed, thought changed. But at the beginning of everything, there was only one question. What is time really? Albert Einstein suddenly became the most famous name in the world, but this recognition was not what he sought. Newspapers printed his photographs, halls filled, universities opened lecterns. People expected answers from him, wanted certainty, security, and guidance. Yet for Albert, science did not mean certainty. It meant responsibility. Knowledge was power, but it was also dangerous. As fame grew, Albert withdrew further into himself. He stayed away from formal clothing, did not care about titles. He preferred quiet rooms to crowded conference halls, because thought developed not in noise, but in solitude. People applauded his equations, but he worried about the consequences those equations could produce. As the world drifted toward a new war, Albert Einstein remained a pacifist. He was against violence. He did not believe in armies. However, as Nazi Germany rose, another fear emerged. If atomic energy were first turned into a weapon in the wrong hands, the consequences could be irreversible. Albert made the hardest decision of his life and wrote a letter to the President of the United States. This letter changed the direction of history. The Manhattan Project began. The atomic bomb was produced. Einstein did not take part in the laboratories, but he knew the door had been opened. Hiroshima and Nagasaki showed humanity the dark face of science. Albert carried this burden for the rest of his life. Later, he said only one sentence: "If I had known, I would have acted differently." The war ended, but the questions did not. Albert began to live a modest life in Princeton. He was one of the most famous scientists in the world, yet he was still searching for a single theory that would unite all the laws of the universe. He never reached this goal. Perhaps it was not meant to be reached. When asked about faith, God, and destiny, Albert was clear. He was not bound to a religion, but he admired the order of the universe. To him, God was not a being, but harmony. Time, space, energy, and matter were parts of the same whole. While humanity tried to understand this whole, it often fell into arrogance. Albert Einstein passed away in 1955. His brain was examined, his notebooks archived, his words quoted. But these were not enough to understand him. His true legacy was not equations, but the questions he left behind. He showed that time was not absolute, and taught that reality did not have a single face. To change the world, one does not need to sit on a throne or command an army. Sometimes it is enough to stop and ask the right question. Perhaps somewhere in a corner of the universe, the same question is still echoing. What is time really? This is the silent legacy of Albert Einstein, the man who broke time. This legacy did not leave humanity definite answers, but the courage to think. Einstein repeatedly emphasized that science becomes dangerous when separated from ethics. While technology was growing rapidly, wisdom was not developing at the same pace. According to him, the real problem was not a lack of knowledge, but a lack of direction. Humanity was approaching an understanding of the universe while neglecting to understand itself. That is why, for Einstein, being a scientist was also an ethical responsibility. Thinking about consequences was as necessary as asking questions. The relativity of time shook humanity's habit of placing itself at the center. No perspective was absolute. This awareness required humility. This was Albert Einstein's silent warning. The universe was vast, humanity was small, but as long as it could think, it was meaningful. Perhaps true progress was not moving faster, but thinking deeper. This thought continued to live on as the most human trace left behind by Einstein. For this reason, his story does not remain in the past. Every new generation encounters Einstein's questions while re-examining time, space, and knowledge, because answers grow old. But the right questions continue to live and carry the human mind forward. This influence is silent, modest, but permanent, and it continues to change the direction of thought for centuries. That is why Einstein is still with us, living on intellectually. If you'd like to see more stories like this, stay with us here on Vornex, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next episodes. In the next video, we'll go after another mind that changed the world. See you there.